England has a state church. So these words are very significant and meaningful to those within the state church. A different orientation. We, who seceded from England, have a different experience. I'll be talking about that a little bit later. Well, thoughts and observations on the integrated life. For me, it begins in second grade. Roxanne Schnell, Mrs. Failing, the robe, Sergeant York, Horatio the One-Eyed. First of all, Roxanne Schnell. Second grade was huge for me. Roxanne Schnell, I kissed her. On the cheek. On the cheek. That initiated a lifelong friendship. She's on Facebook. She's in LA. Unfortunately, she's a Kings fan. If I'd stayed in LA, I probably would have been a Kings fan too. But I know I had an impact on her in high school. She had lots of questions. She's Jewish. She had lots of questions about Jesus. And I haven't felt it's the right time to follow up and just see where she's at. But I do have a connection with her on Facebook. Mrs. Failing, she was the best cusser in the neighborhood. I mean, she'd go out, she lived on the opposite corner we did, and Cheryl, you get dry. And my mom would come out of her plane and go, come on in, quick, come in the house, come in the house. Why, Mom? Why? Well, we kind of knew why. So I was kind of shocked when Mrs. Failing showed up on the back door asking if I wanted to come to a daily vacation Bible school. Her life had changed. So I went to this daily vacation Bible school at a Nazarene church, and those folks are really into holiness. And I remember distinctly, I was moved. I heard the gospel. I mean, I'd been baptized in an infant at a Congregational church in South Pasadena. I was part of the choir and all that. But I remember making a commitment for Jesus Christ. That final, it was a Friday night celebration, you know the gig. I recited the 23rd Psalm from memory. My life was changed. I knew it was changed. There are a few other things that changed my life, or let's say directed it. I saw The Robe, and Richard Burton was in that movie. He played Marcellus, the centurion that was presiding over the crucifixion. And this is a novel, and he had a changed life. He became a Christian. What impressed me was when he became a Christian, he did it in a Roman way. I pledge to Christ my service, my life, my strength. And that has stayed with me over the years. Here's someone within his own cultural understanding turning to Christ. And that has stuck with me over the years. You and I need to be wise enough to see when that transitional moment occurs and maybe allow some culturalizations to exist there. Rather, wait a minute, before you do that, you got to do this first. And you all know Paul had some issues with that concerning circumcision before, whether the Gentiles had to be circumcised before they could truly be Christians. So that was a learning moment for me, Marcellus. I also saw Sergeant York, with Gary Cooper as Sergeant York, and he was a hellion who came to faith, but part of a community that was more pacifist in its understanding. So he's drafted to go off to World War I. And there's a moment, and I don't know to what extent this is accurate or not, but it made an impact on my life, the movie did. His commander said, here, Alvin, take the Bible, take a history of the United States, go off on your own, and whatever you decide, I'll back you up. No, that's fantasy land. I don't think that's reality. But he went up into the hills, and he read the history of the United States, and he read the Bible. And what he got out of that was, there are times when it's appropriate to be willing to lay down your life for the sake of others. I got that big time. Big time. And to bring that thought home, I remember listening to, in my sister's bedroom, a little 45 record player that had the donut holes in it and vinyl. Hey, vinyl's coming back. okay? Well, this is a 45 RPMs. I heard the story of Horatio at the bridge. Horatio the One-Eyed, who had already sacrificed an eye for Rome, and when the Etruscans came to punish Rome for violating a truce, he stood at one end of the bridge with two friends, and he taunted the Etruscan lords to take him on one at a time. Meanwhile, his friends were tearing down the bridge behind him to keep Rome safe. He dismissed his friends, so there he is all by himself, holding off the Etruscan army. I imagine he's, you and whose army? We've heard that several times. We heard that in Lord of the Rings. And most recently, if you saw the last movie of Harry Potter, Neville Longbottom is at the backside of Hogwarts with a rickety bridge saying those very same words. It's not in the books, so I'm told. But someone writing the screenplay thought, here is Neville's Horatio at the bridge moment, okay? So what I'm trying to tell you is, if Jesus was willing to lay down his life for me, and greater love hath no man more than this, that he's willing to lay down his life for a friend, and then I have these examples of Romans who didn't even know Jesus getting that they need to lay down their lives for the sake of others. This all made a lot of sense to me. And so fast forward, by the time I got to high school, I was going off to West Point. The Vietnam was winding down, but in our minds it was still raging. And so I got the appointment to West Point. Okay, now my senior year I got mono. I couldn't do a pull-up, so I could not perform the physical tests that would secure my appointment to West Point. But I got appointed, and I was, in my mind, ready to go. But I had to wrestle with the idea that, Steve, are you willing to be fragged by your own men? That means to be in your hooch and have a fragmentation grenade thrown in since you're an officer, and to be killed by your own men. Are you willing to do that? And I thought, it could come to that. But I'll accept that end if that's the end. But what was countering that fear or concern was, I thought that because of the way the Lord had led me in my life, I thought I could make a difference one-on-one with people in the army, in the horrors of war, that needed to know Jesus. And so I was willing to go. But that door was closed to me. So I went to Westmont College instead, because my youth director always took me up to Westmont, and he'd say, hey, Steve, want to go up and see Westmont beat Biola in basketball in their gym? Yeah. In fact, as a student at Westmont and Biola had this huge rivalry, and we usually defeated each other at our respective home gyms. It's a great rivalry between Santa Barbara Westmont and LA, Biola or La Mirada. And I don't know, maybe it's still going on today. Who knows? My youth director took me up to Westmont on a weeknight to see a basketball game, and it became the most natural thing for me to go to Westmont College and follow the Lord. So as a professor here at Trinity, as some of you are preparing to be youth directors, and by the way, I'm not going into this much, but I was a youth director for about a year and a half too. If you gain something from this place, bring your students. Share it with your students. There's a lot of fine growing, nurturing, maturing in Christ that's here. If you truly believe that, when you leave, send us students. We're here. So I ended up at Westmont, and I thought, well, maybe God wants me to be a pastor. I got mono my senior year, so I dropped all the real heavy load classes, biology, physics, never had those. I took office practice and public speaking. And in public speaking, I sharpened up a few things. And I thought, well, maybe the Lord wants me to be a pastor, i.e., wants me to preach. So, go to Westmont. Communications. That's what you need to be a pastor. You have to learn how to communicate. I got on the Westmont campus and found out they had pulled that major that summer. Well, now what am I going to do? Well, I kind of like history. I really like history a lot. So I became a history major. But with an eye that I was going to go to seminary. So I took my 2 years of Greek, and along the way, that sophomore year at Westmont, I took philosophy. In Europe, students learn philosophy in junior high. They learn how to ask the big questions of life in junior high. By the way, junior high, that's a time that you're bar mitzvahed or bat mitzvahed. That's a time of confirmation. Maybe in America, we think that's a time to be junior hires. But in other cultures, that's the coming of age for young men and women, and other cultures take that more seriously, and so they introduce philosophy into the curriculum at a lot early age compared to us. So in America, we usually get sophomore year in college, typically. That changed my life. When I saw Randy Springer coming in and argue for free will, oh yeah, man, that's the next day come in and argue compellingly for determinism. Wow. I learned something there. We need to use our mind to look at the strongest positions that we might disagree with, and then engage them in cultural combat. There's a real easy tendency for us to take cheap shots as Christians. We're on the know, we're all going to heaven, we're saved by the blood of Christ, and we know we're okay, we're good, we're holy. So we could take these cheap shots. If you read the Gospels, brothers and sisters, you'll find that Jesus did not take the cheap shot. Jesus tended to clear the decks of those that thought they were holy so he could have one-to-one contact with the sinners. And he still challenged them. He wasn't a wimp about that. He still had truth, compelling, right to the bone, right to the marrow truth with that individual. But he wanted no distractions of those who were holy in the process, so he could interact with someone individually. If Jesus wasn't going to take cheap shots with those that opposed him, well, we ought to ramp up. Do not waste your time here at Trinity. Do not take your classes thinking, well, it's a requirement, so I'll check it off, I'm done with that. You have an opportunity here for every single class you take to be life-changing. Yeah, maybe it just changes your life that much. Or maybe it's this much. But if you go into a class and you say, I don't want to be here, this is ridiculous, it's not immediately applicable to my life, and you fight it, frankly, dear friends, you're foolish. You're acting like a fool. Take the opportunity you have before you and accept the fact that if you allow yourself to engage in the discipline of a discipline, you might acquire education. And if you internalize it, none of that's going to waste. None of that's going to waste. So at Westmont, I did an honors project. I stayed a fifth year to get a philosophy degree. I went off to Fuller Seminary and was doing well there. But in that first year, that first quarter, I took 12 credits of Hebrew in 10 weeks. 10 weeks. Plus an intro to ministry class. I read Life Together by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I'm requiring that in the History of Christianity class. And Dietrich, kind of a martyr to the faith, executed by the Nazis in a prison camp. What was it? About a week before the Allies got there, they strung him up with piano wire. Okay, he was implicated in one of the plots to assassinate Hitler. So he met his end there. He has some very compelling things to say about what the church is. It essentially amounts to this. He says a lot in there, but the thing that got to me was, we do not create the church. Jesus did by what he did on the cross. That's what creates the body of Christ. And so when we walk into a situation with other believers, we are blessed and benefiting from something that Jesus created. Now, any of you going off into full-time Christian ministry, you really need to read Life Together and ponder whether there's truth there. I think you'll see it. That could change your whole orientation about what you think you're doing in Christian ministries. God gives you gifts, but you got to remember the church has already been created. And as it increases, we play a role in that, but God makes it happen in individual hearts, one-on-one. We're used, we're involved, but we should keep that mystery of how we're being used to increase the kingdom soul by soul and quietly as its shining bounds increase. We're called to that, but we need to remember who really made it happen. And we're involved, and we participate, but Jesus made it happen and continues to make it happen. So I ended up leaving Fuller, go to UCSB, did an MA and PhD in intellectual history, okay? That's what the gown represents. Yeah, I'm the military guy, but actually, from my perspective, I'm the intellectual historian who's taking history of ideas, theology, philosophy, and study religion, as in World Civ, made those an internal part of me so I can ready to be a minister in any of those areas for life. And here's an example of that. First full-time ministry that Linda and I had together full-time was at Sterling College in the middle of Kansas. We were there only 4 years. And I was an assistant professor of history and humanities. For 2 of those years, at least once a month, and the final year, every Sunday at Saxman Presbyterian Church with maybe 30 people, 6 miles from our house, I was in the pulpit. I was doing pulpit supply. A lot of these little churches out there can't afford to have a full-time pastor, but they wanted someone to come and preach. Now, if you would have told me back in 1972, when I entered Westmont, that I'd be out in the middle of Kansas somewhere, a little podunk church, preaching, and what informs my preaching? Greek, Hebrew, history, philosophy, theology. All those things inform my preaching. Why? Because, folks, I've internalized those things. They're not just out there. They're not just, how do you internalize it? It's not just some sort of PowerPoint, or you look up the keywords in a textbook and then you barf them back on some multiple guess exam and call it credentialing or education or something like that. You have a chance to really go deep with all the disciplines in every class that you take and make it part of who you are. And young Padawan learners, be patient. You have no idea where God's going to lead you. In fact, if you truncate your education and say, oh, I don't need this, this is not practical for me, God will use you. God, you've given your life to God. God will use you. But he might end up using you down this narrow little path. If, on the other hand, you take in all the disciplines, you'll have the delight, living an integrated life, of having lots of choices and options, and all of them are godly. I think it's really a misunderstanding to think that there's one plan for your life. You got to find it and stay on that narrow path. The narrow path to God is a moral one and a tough road of looking at him. But if you have committed your life to Jesus Christ, he will give you the desires of your heart, because as your desires match the world that you understand and the broadness of it, he will find a way for service. And I could personal testimony to that. I had no idea I'd be preaching in little churches in Kansas. Hey, man, I'm from California, Santa Barbara. Kansas? Where tornadoes are? I saw Wizard of Oz. That freaked me out. We were in Kansas 4 years. Hey, man, give me an earthquake any day. Tornadoes, man, are they frightening. Gosh, are they frightening. So look, what I'm trying to tell you is this. God will use it all. Whatever you internalize, he'll use. If you internalize little, he'll use the little you have. But why internalize just a little when you have a whole smorgasbord of a chance to understand the vastness of the world God made, but even more important, a vastness to understand the humanity that lives within it. Opportunities abound. You don't know right now what you'll see in the future. So in terms of living the integrated life, man, prepare for it now. think broadly. Gen Ed's really crucial. And I know you guys are afflicted by this, gosh, I got to get a job, I got to graduate from college with no debt and all that. I get that. I lived in a different age. I understand that. But in this age that you're in, to the degree that you can, become an educated being. And that might mean you need to learn some new learning styles, rather than telling the professors that they have to teach to your learning style. If you're a mature human being, you'll acquire various learning styles so that you can operate in any situation. And put it crassly, if you're in a business setting, if you want to be kept on while others are being fired, you need to be indispensable. Code for, you got to change and adapt so that you could do anything. So you might consider practicing that now when you're in a class that's not your cup of tea. Give the professor a chance. In fact, if you're having difficult feelings, talk to the professor. Give your professor a chance to coach you through the material. Oh man, I hate this. Talk to your professor about that, because we're here to mentor you, not just in matters of the spirit, but also in matters of the maturity of mind. Okay, comments on the integrated life. What about war? Holy war. This is a work in progress. I don't have all my Bible proof texts and all that. And by the way, if you look in the scripture themselves, chapter and verse, that really is a feature that was created in the 500s. I forget the monk that did that, but it's a more recent addition, 1,500 years ago. But if you read the New Testament, see how they quote scripture. They're not quoting chapter verse. Sometimes it's a little fuzzy too. But you know what that says? Oh, gee, that's not chapter verse. What it means is they've integrated the Word of God into their hearts and they know it inside. Wow. And God wants us to bring His Word into our hearts, not on tablets of stone, but written on our hearts. You see the connection with education. You see the connection with internalizing. This is something that God wants us to do. Okay, so here's some comments and observations. First of all, only God makes a covenant. We can't. Oh, we can try, but God came to Abraham and made a covenant with him, and He is keen to keep it. Any attempts of us to make a covenant with God, we fail because we're sinners. So we cannot make a binding covenant with God. We'll fail, but God makes a binding covenant with us, and He sees it through. But doing this biblical warfare class, I'm learning tons. I'm being reminded of how God works within our feeble frame. God doesn't reveal everything to us while He's doing it. Think of Job. He didn't know what was going on around him, and maybe never will know. Think of the disciples. When did they finally get that Jesus was the Son of God? Oh yeah, Peter said, "Thou art the Christ, Son of the living God," but then he denied Him 3 times. Isn't it when Jesus rose from the dead and came amongst them, He had to tell them what all the 3 years meant? And we don't have a lot of details there, but that's when He began to teach them, and they started to realize the reality of that. So how's that apply to us? We might go through a lifetime of obedience to God, following Him, slipping, and yet still our hearts, we have, like David, we have a heart towards God even though we sin. So we might have some slip-ups. We might have some unanswered times. I still don't have a complete answer for why I got mono my senior year when that was going to be the tops of everything. I would have gone to West Point. God, why did... I get little bits and pieces along the way, but I haven't had a clear revelation of why that was. I do know this. When I'm in a hospital, I've learned that when you're next to someone that's dying, you need to shut up and just be there sometimes and not try and make things better for you while they're in a world of pain. Sometimes it's just enough to just stand there next to them and be there so that you can symbolize the Spirit of God standing with them, just being there, So that might be one thing I learned from that experience. Was that worth the whole pain and suffering of being out of school for 2 months and having 2 of my friends come visit me? Ouch. So I'm still learning from that experience. I don't have to know everything that was going on there. I've gotten enough. But what I'm trying to say is some things you're not going to know completely how God's moving. God acts unexpectedly. He surprises us. Have you considered that Isaac and Jacob were second sons, not first sons? Ishmael and Esau. I know the theology behind it. But look at the cultural context of that. God went with the number 2 son. That's huge. God works within the envelope of our culture, but often on the fridge and maybe just on the outside of the bounds, off the chain within our cultural context. He does so, I think, for a feeble frame. But watch these patterns that slip by as we're trying to get at, where's the miracle? We're missing some other things along the way. Watch for the patterns. Second sons. God works unexpectedly. Now, what about God, Yahweh Wars with the Hebrews? Well, a pattern that I'm seeing here is God acted directly at the Red Sea. He had to, or Israel would have been wiped out. At Jericho, the Hebrew men were all circumcised, very close to the time that they attacked Jericho. So I think they need a little bit of help bringing the walls down. That's oversimplistic, but it's a pattern for you to at least start with. And then as we get into the interior of Canaan, we start to see that, for instance, in the Judges, God says, Deborah, I will deliver them unto your hand. And then if you read the description, it's about Deborah's use of stratagem and all of that to defeat the foe. And what I see is this pattern of less direct, powerful miracle, and more we're working with the abilities of the leaders of Israel. The pattern I see there is Israel had small armies, but their generalship was amazing. They divided their armies into several pieces. They had night marches. They used everything possible in terms of wisdom applied in war to defeat the foes. And I think that was God honoring. And you don't see huge miracles. God is with them. Oh, by the way, check this out. If God wanted to, he could have had the Hebrews go into Canaan, and all they'd have to do is they come up to a city, take the cover off the chest. And you know what would happen. You saw it in Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom. God could have just fried everyone in Canaan and let the Hebrews walk in and bury the dead, or not, and occupy it. He could have done that, couldn't he? He could have burned everyone. Oh, and maybe we're tempted to think he did it because somehow the Hebrews weren't faithful enough. You know what? They weren't faithful enough. God had to carry out the promise. There's no covenant that Israel made with God, and if you stay true to God, God will be with you. No, it doesn't work that way. God made the covenant with Israel and was going to see it through. And evidently, he decided to, after some big miracles, and he could do it whenever he wanted, he decided to work through the process. Now check this out. David and Goliath. If you read that passage carefully, what you'll see is David comes up and he says, who is this big giant? Who's an affront to God? I'll take him down. Now, I don't see David, we don't see him in a corner, oh, Jesus, or wait, no, Jesus. Oh, Yahweh, give me the strength. Please, 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 empower me and all that. There's none of that. Why not? Because David already knew God was with him. Why? Because he killed the lion coming to take out the flock. Well, the lion's not Goliath and the whole Philistines. David honored God, and he was inconsistent when he became king. We're not going there yet. He honored God, and then what did he do? Based upon the experience that he knew that he could be an instrument of God, he stepped forward, he took the stones, wham. We do not see a reading where, and God took the pebble and hallowed it and consecrated it and made it fly straight by the power of his hand into Goliath's head. It looks like it was David's skill. The thing going on there was that David honored God and presented himself as a vessel having been a vessel and experience with God. It wasn't that he had to get all hyped up and emotional. It was like this centeredness and understanding that was a strength, the pillar of strength within him, that God was with him and he could do this. You might think that's arrogant, but I'm thinking this might be an option of how we act when we know God's with us. And we're called to do something that's incredibly challenging. If God's, well, we'll step forward. And I think it also meant that David was willing to accept the consequences. If Goliath's spear had gone right through him, he was ready to accept that too. You see, it's a state of mind ready to be used by God that empowered David. It wasn't, if you pray to God, God will give you a supernatural power. He could if you want. But I'm not sure that's the pattern I see. So check this out. What about wars? Yoda's right. Wars do not make one great. You know, I'm looking for the great warrior Yoda. Wars don't make one great. Wars are horrible. Wars are bad, all of them. And if you want to get the lowdown on that, see if you could get someone who's been in war to talk to you. Veterans of Vietnam and World War II might be a little more inclined today to talk about it. But if you've been in war and you've taken a life or been seen friends taken, war's horrible. There's nothing to be glorified about it. So why do I reenact and know all that? Some people think I'm glorifying war. The people, no. What we're trying to do is honor the sacrifice of those that were willing to lay down their lives for the rest of us idiots. So that's what we're doing. That's the fascination I find with military history, is that war is a crucible where your character is tested. It puts you in a crisis, and the real you is going to emerge. And so that's part of what's going on when we do these war games. It's a test of the student's character. Who are they in a crisis? Have you and I really been tested by crises enough to see what we really amount to? So that's something to think about. Wars are not great. So what about Yahweh involved in war? I think the formula we need to shy away from is somehow, if I'm faithful, God will do miraculous things in battle for me. That's almost like a covenant status. I'll make a covenant with you, God. If I honor you, you'll honor me. It doesn't work that way. God made the covenant with the Jews, and he'll see it through by whatever means. So what about us? Well, look, some thoughts about America. First of all, the dissenting colonists. How does the wars of God and Yahweh apply to America? The colonists, many of them, most of them were dissenters trying to get away from state churches. They came to this continent, and what did some of them do? They set up state churches. Because as dissenters, they thought that their way was best, so they set up a state church like the Puritans in Massachusetts. They had some dissenters amongst them, and to make a long story short, and by the way, let's see, Dr. Gunlock, you're over here. You're teaching American church history this spring. So if you want the lowdown on what's going on in American church history, he's the man this spring, okay? So consider taking that class. So we have the Baptists. Roger Williams and the Baptists went to Rhode Island to set up shop there because they didn't get along with the Puritans. Look, if you look at the long, and then in Maryland, it was Roman Catholics. Look, there was no, the separation of church and state in this country is founded upon the fact that we had several different colonial churches. How do you bring them all together and become unified? You say, we're not going to recognize any one of those churches. That means every single state and every single religious group had to give up the hope that it was going to be calling the shots spiritually for the entire country. There is no Christian America in that sense that there was one Christian faith. There were these different denominational expressions. And we know that. If you're in the Protestant world, it's been that way ever since Martin Luther. But we tend to forget that, and nowadays we think, oh, Christian America, we're all one big happy family, we've never been contentious. The facts are different, so keep that in mind. With the Constitution, we didn't have a covenant with God. We had a separation of church and state. We had the existence of slavery. We tolerated it, okay? And we tolerated it originally because the southern states needed to be part of the greater union so that we wouldn't be overwhelmed by some foreign power. Oh, that's never going to happen. War of 1812, Great Britain burned down Washington City, and it was the defenders of Fort McHenry defending Baltimore that saved Baltimore. They were taking us apart, Britain was, our old country. And so the concept that we need a strong, centralized government where all of the individual sovereign states gave up something for the benefit of a unity, that's part and parcel of what it is to be united in the Americas. The Bill of Rights was also needed. People have the right to bear arms so that they could stop a tyrannical government. It's not about whether you can hunt or not. So that's something that needs to be brought into the discussion this presidential election. There's no establishment of any one religion, but the implication is we're going to have diversity of religion. Just because the Americans were predominantly Christian in orientation, they were divided by denomination. And today in America, we have several more diverse religions amongst us. So I don't think we're going to be able to say America was Christian, all unified. It's just not the case. And therefore, only Christians are allowed in this country. In other religions, no, we're diverse. And that is embedded in these words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights. What are those rights? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Just for Christians? What's embedded in the country, it's for everyone, even the people we disagree with. Back to the military. If I go off to become a soldier, I'm willing to lay my life down for even the people I disagree with. And therein lies the way for us, as the body of Christ, to break through in the culture wars. It's a matter, can I mess with you a minute? It's a matter of coming down and interacting with the individual. I mean, we could be up here and we can make pronouncements of the aggregate and all of that. But in the end, soul by soul and silently, the shining bounds increase. We have the opportunity one-on-one to connect with individuals. Sometimes our politics and our great ideas will prevent those individuals from being ministered to. So look, how do we connect with non-Christians, even on this campus? My admonition to you is become educated. Don't just accept credentialing or training. Be educated, broaden your world. You'll have more abilities to connect with people that need to see God. Secondly, for America, let's engage in the right culture wars. I think it's probably a diversion to think that we could restore Christian America in some way and everything will be fine. Look, the way I read the end times, read through Revelation, I'm not sure America's part of it. It just might be that whatever demise we have, or if we're sidelined to irrelevancy, maybe that's part of the end times and Jesus coming. I just don't see where America has a part. I could be wrong. But I just don't see practically where we fit into Revelation. It could be that our current situation embedded in our country where everyone can pursue life, liberty, and happiness, including non-Christians, that's kind of what our country is about. So how do we as Christians act and respond within America? Let's fight the right battles. Hey, look, I'd still be ready to die for this country and all of you guys, but I'm too old, they won't take me. But that's a calling. It's a calling. So what are you called to do? Be ready to give an account for the hope that is within you. Use everything possible from your education and all your life experiences and your thorough reading of Scripture to be prepared, to be ready to do that with the individuals that God sets before you on the way. Oh, there's so much more to be said, so much more I could say. But this is the letter I share with you, the letter of my life today, October 14th, 2015. Dr. Santry.